Hi guys, so today we're going to be taking notes on page 22 and 23. I hope you watched the video on how to glue in your ISN on page 22 and 23. So these examples that I'm actually going to do today are not examples from those pages. However, you can use these examples to solve the problems on page 22 and 23. So page 22 talks about adding rational numbers. What are rational numbers? A rational number is a number that can be written as a over b or a over b as a fraction, where a and b are integers and b cannot equal 0. B cannot equal 0 because remember, we can't have a 0 in the denominator. To add rational numbers like negative and positive fractions and decimals follow the same rules as adding integers. So when you're adding integers, we use the adding integer song. Same signs add and keep, different signs subtract, keep the sign of the bigger number, then you'll be exact. Those same exact rules apply when you're adding and subtracting decimals and fractions. So the first one says negative 8.9 plus negative 0.03. Well, they're both the same sign, so we're going to add them together and keep the sign. When we're adding decimals, guys, please make sure you line them up vertically because it does help to have them this way to see which number goes exactly into which one. So we're going to be adding these two negative numbers. 0 plus 3 is 3, 9 plus 0 is 9. We're going to move that decimal place right down here, and 8 plus 0 is 8 again, and keep the sign. So it's going to be negative 8.93. Okay. Next one is a fraction with common denominators. So when we have fractions with common denominators, whenever we're adding and subtracting, that's the first thing we look for. We have to make sure our denominators are the same for both of the fractions. If they're not, we're going to have to change the denominators to match. Because they're the same, we can just go ahead and add the numerators. And let's use those integer rules again. Negative 1/5 plus 3/5. They're two different signs, right? We have a negative sign and a positive sign, so we're going to subtract these two numbers and keep the sign of the bigger number. So 3 minus 1 is 2 over 5. Bigger number is 3/5, which is positive, so our answer is 2/5. Okay, next one, negative 3/4 plus 2/5. We want to get our denominators the same. Remember, 4 and 5 do not match, so we have to say what number can we multiply both 4 and, what number does both 4 and 5 go into? Well, it's 20, so we're going to multiply this side by 5 to get 20 and this side by 4 to get 20. But whatever you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. So we're going to multiply the top by 5 to get 15, and the bottom or denominator by 5 to get 20, and don't forget that negative sign. Bring down the addition sign. 4 times 2 is 8. 5 times 4 is 20. If we look at the signs, they're different signs, so different signs subtract and keep the sign of the bigger number. So we know our answer is going to be negative 15 minus 8 is 7 over 20, and that is my final answer, negative 7 over 20. On to our mixed number fractions. So the first thing we're going to do is multiply our denominator by the whole number, then add the numerator. Do the same thing to the second fraction, multiply your denominator by the whole number and add the numerator. 10 times 3 is 30, plus 3 is 33 over 10. Bring down that negative sign, addition sign. 4 times 3 is 12, plus 1 is 13 over 3. We keep the denominators the same whenever we're converting mixed numbers to fractions. Now we have to go and get common denominators. So what is the least common denominator? It's 30. How do we get 30 over here? Well, we multiply 10 by 3 And over here, multiply 3 by 10. And whatever we do to the denominator, we must do to the numerator. Multiply this. When we do that, we end up with 33 times 3 is 99 over 3 times 10 is 30. Negative. Add 13 times 10 is 130 over 3 times 10 is 30. Now that we have common denominators, we can use our integer rules, different signs, so we're going to subtract 130 minus 99 will leave us with 31 over 30. Keep the sign of the bigger number, so this is our bigger number, which is positive, so this is going to be positive. If you look at it, it is an improper fraction, so we're going to turn it back into a mixed number. Well, how do we do that? We say, how many times does my denominator go into my numerator? Well, it goes into it one time with a remainder of 1, and my denominator stays the same. So my answer is 1 and 1/30. Go ahead and do the practice problems on this page. You should be able to follow the examples. The same rules apply for all of these. Go ahead and label this as adding rational numbers. Okay. That's page 22. On to page 23, subtracting rational numbers. Well, it's the same exact thing. Rational numbers, again, is any number that can be written as a fraction, a over b, where a and b are integers and b cannot equal 0. However, to subtract rational numbers, just like with addition, it's going to be the same exact thing. We're going to, there we go, subtracting integers. So whenever we subtract integers, the first thing we have to do is change. We keep that first number the same, negative 12.41. Change that subtraction to an addition. Change that negative to a positive 9.95. Now we look at the two numbers. This one's negative, this one's positive, so different signs. So we're going to subtract. Before we start doing that, go ahead and line your numbers up. Match the decimal places, so we subtract the correct digit from the correct digit. 1 minus 5, can't do that, so we must borrow 3. This turns into an 11. 11 minus 5 gives us 0. 3 minus 9, can't do that. We must borrow again. This becomes a 13 minus 9, 4. 1 minus 9, can't do that, but before we do that, please bring down that decimal. Must borrow, that turns into a 0. 11 minus 9 gives us a 2. Well, now that we've subtracted, we have to look at the bigger number. 12.41 is the bigger number if we look at the absolute value of the two numbers, and that is a negative number. So my answer is going to be negative 2.46. Okay, subtracting fractions with common denominators. We're going to do the same thing. Keep, change. Keep that 7/12 the same. Change that subtraction to an addition. Change that negative fraction to a positive, so that's going to be 13 over 12. We have common denominators, so all we have to do is add the numerator. 7 times 13 is 20 over 12. That can be reduced. 10 over 6, 5 over 3. That 3 goes into 5 one time with a remainder of 2 over 3. You can reduce it by in steps like this if you'd like, or you can reduce it all in one go. Okay, so our answer is 1 2/3. Okay, next one, negative 1 1/3. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes real quick. Negative 1 2/3 minus negative 9 over 4. We're going to do the same thing, keep, change, keep, change. Keep that first fraction the same, change that subtraction to an addition, change that negative fraction to a positive fraction. Different signs, so we're going to subtract, but before we start doing that, we have to get common denominators. So the least common denominator is going to be 12. Well, you have to multiply 3 by 4 to get 12. So what you do to the denominator, you must do to the numerator. 4 times 3 is 12, so multiply the numerator by 3. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 3 is 12, and that's going to be a negative. And add that to 9 times 3 is 27 over 12 again. Again, different signs, so we're going to subtract 27 minus 4, so we get 23 over 12, and keep the sign of the bigger number. This is my bigger number, so that's going to be a positive 23 over 12. It is an improper fraction, so how many times does 12 go into 23? It goes into it once, with a remainder of 11 over 12. So my answer is 1 and 11 twelfths. Now we have a mixed number with uncommon denominators. So again, first thing, just like when you're adding, you're going to change the mixed number into an improper fraction, and then we'll apply our integer rules. So 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7, and that's going to be a negative over 2 because my denominator does not change. I'm going to do the keep, change that subtraction to an addition sign, and then change that last fraction to a negative. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 5 is 11 over 6. Now we have improper fractions with uncommon denominators. Our least common denominator is 12, so we have to multiply the 2 by 6 and the 6 by 2. Do the same thing to the numerator on each side. 6 times 7 is going to be 42. Negative over 6 times 2 is 12, plus 11 times 2 is 22. And remember, that's a negative fraction. 6 times 2 is 12. Now, both of my fractions are negative, so they're the same sign. So we're going to add and keep the same sign. 62 over 12, and that's negative 62 over 12. How many times does 12 go into, sorry, I meant 64. Let's change that real quick, 64. How many times does 12 go into 64? Well, it goes 12 times 5 is equal to 60. So my whole number is 5. 60 minus 64 is a remainder of 4 over 12. We can reduce that, and don't forget your negative sign. 5 and 1/3 negative. My final answer is negative 5 and 1/3. Go ahead and do the practice problems on page 23. Label this subtracting rational numbers. Okay, good luck, guys.